Welcome, everybody, to Generation Z Podcast, Episode 2. My name is Jake. I'm joined here with my friend Matthew. And today, what is our topic going to be, Matthew?
We are going to be talking about Islam today.
That's right. Good old Islam, the religion of peace, as some would say. So we'll get into how accurate that definition is in a little bit. But yeah, so Matthew, do you want to kind of just introduce I don't know, where we are with Islam and what we're going to be talking about today in this podcast?
Okay, so from what I understand, we're going to be talking about the conservative viewpoints, like what the conservative issues are with the religion of Islam, and a lot of the falsities that are often often put on by the left. That there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding the religion of Islam that is popularized by the left, and we're going to be trying to clarify a couple of those. So do you want to start on some of your research?
Yeah, well, I would say the first thing, and I know we talked a little bit about this in our intro episode, episode 1, but the first thing I would say is we need to make sure everyone knows that when we're criticizing Islam, we are criticizing ideas. We're not criticizing people, right? We're not saying Muslims are bad people or all Muslims are terrorists. All of our opinions are based on research, specifically Pew Research, which is one of the most credible research research centers in the entire world to get data from. So we will be pulling some stats from them. But yeah, it's just important to know that this is a discussion and a criticism of ideas and beliefs, right? It's not a criticism of the people themselves, right? So I feel like we need to first, before we can jump into it, we need to make that distinction, just so for anyone watching, that we make that clear.
Yeah, of course. All right, so starting off, do you want to go over Pew Research and some of the statistics they've put out?
Well, I think first we should talk about our points, and then we should use the Pew Research as subtext to back up our points rather than just making the podcast about the data. Because while that's important, I think it's more important when it backs up a claim we make. So, yeah, so the first thing I would say, and you would probably agree with me, is that I think liberals have completely failed when it comes to Islam. Right? They're they're supposed to be the ones always fighting for the little guy. And Islam as an ideology is so oppressive to women, to gays, to all these people that liberals claim, to any other religion really, all these groups that liberals claim to love and want to fight for. But then when we say, oh, well, what about Islam's treatment of gays? They're like, well, yeah, but remember the Crusades? Like that's their favorite point, is whenever we criticize something about Islam, they bring up something about Christianity. Like, well, the KKK, like, okay, yeah, that was a bad group, but like we're not talking about Christianity right now. Like, we can talk about Christianity in a second, but like let's try to stay on topic. It's like defending something by attacking someone else's beliefs is not a good way of defending what the beliefs we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And a lot of that comes within like a lot of misconceptions of like what Islam stands for. Like as you mentioned before, it's often referred to as the religion of peace, and that's just simply not true. That can be proven through a lot of like their belief in Sharia law. I mean, it's a very oppressive religion. That's why I believe that the odds of there being a reformation in the near future just isn't that likely, just because it's such an oppressive religion. I just don't see a way that a reformation can occur unless something drastically changes, which would happen because of reformation. But since it's so oppressive, I just don't see how that's possible in Islam's current state.
Yeah, I agree. I think where we make the claim that Islam is an oppressive religion and that it's not the religion of peace is all you need to do is read the texts of the Quran and of I believe it's called the Hadith. So you just need to really read those, and you can find so many quotes that we sometimes say like, oh, well, you need to interpret it. Some of these things cannot be interpreted figuratively, right? So it's important to know that. And then also, an important thing about the text is that people still believe these today. And we'll talk about this a little bit when we have the numbers down of Pew Research and talk about how many people actually do take these texts literally. It's a startling and quite frankly a scary amount of people that take these texts seriously. So Matt, I'm just wondering, can you explain a little bit about how these countries in the Middle East, how they are theocracies? Because a lot of times we talk about, oh, these countries oppress, women, right? They oppress gays. They say, well, that has nothing to do with Islam. Can you talk about how their laws are? It's a theocracy. Just explain that.
I think you might be better suited to explain this part. Like this might be a part where you would like you presented the question.
Okay.
I think you can answer it best.
Okay. All right. So these countries are theocracies, right? Which means that their laws are based on their religion, right? So if we look at America, for example, we can say, oh, America has had a terrible past, but okay, our laws weren't necessarily based on our text, right? That's the secular separation between church and state, right? Whereas in these Islamic countries, and I call them Islamic countries because their laws are based on the laws of Islam as given in the Quran, as in their religious texts. So when we say that, being gay is punishable by death in these countries, or, prison time, or anything like that, it's important to realize that those laws aren't separate from Islam as a religion. They are actually one and the same. And that is the whole idea of a theocracy. So, you can't say, oh, well, that their laws and mistreatment has nothing to do with Islam. It has everything to do with Islam because that's how they base their laws.
Yeah. And a lot of those laws are, like you mentioned, come from their beliefs, and especially when the biggest issue I have is when those laws are surrounded around Sharia law specifically, because a lot of most people agree that Sharia law is objectively wrong. Some of the things that Sharia law states is objectively wrong in today's world. That if most people read that, they'd be horrified by that anyone would ever believe that.
Yeah, no, Sharia law is this terrible set of beliefs and a terrible way to rule your people. And just while we're on the point of Sharia law, let's actually look at how many people actually support Sharia law. So these numbers are all according to Pew Research. In Indonesia, you have a majority, 143 out of 205 million Muslims supporting strict Sharia law. So that's pretty startling. In Pakistan, it's 76%. In Bangladesh, it's 82%. In Nigeria, it's 71%. In Iran, it's 83%. I mean, and these are just some of the countries, right? Afghanistan, it's 99%. So the idea that, oh, just a small minority of these Muslims believe these radical, oppressive laws, that's unfortunately not true. It is a heavy majority in a lot of these countries that support these laws.
Yeah, and just so everyone's clear, this is where we're getting our data. It should be up on screen right now. It's from Pew Research, obviously a very reputable researching firm. And,
absolutely.
And I think it's also important we make the distinction that this is in other countries, because I don't believe that the majority of American Muslims believe this, but I do believe the majority of Muslims in other countries believe this.
Well, I do have the numbers actually for the United States. So in the USA, this is according to the same source. It might have been in a different polling session. I believe these numbers came from 2010, if I am correct, or 2013, one of those two. They're a few years old. But anyway, 13% of Muslims in the USA said violence can be justified. That's being violence in the name of religion. So then 19% said they were favorable toward Al-Qaeda, or they just weren't sure. By the way, if you're not sure whether or not you're favorable towards Al-Qaeda, you're favorable toward them. And so right there, you're looking at about 500,000 radical Muslims living in the U.S., right? And that's a startling number. 500,000 Muslims that that believe that religious violence can be justified and are either favorable or aren't sure about their feelings towards a terrorist organization. I mean, that's startling numbers, and those are the facts, right? So,
Yeah.
we talk about how this is just such a tiny population, which fortunately enough, in America, it is a small population, but it's not the same story when you look at these other countries.
Yeah, and I think I think it's important that we restate it because we do have more people in the stream now. This isn't we're not attacking people here. We're disagreeing with the ideas behind the religion. I think that's a very important distinction that we make. And just when I was first said, not that many people were in the stream yet, so I think it's just important that we re-clarify that because there are a couple more in the stream now. So I think that clarification just is very important. We're attacking the ideas that are being held by a lot of the majority of Muslims, as was shown through those studies, and just because some of the beliefs that come from Sharia law are objectively wrong. Some of the things that Sharia law states should be law is objectively wrong in today's world. You ask most liberals, they'll be horrified by some of this stuff.
And here I actually have a list of things under Sharia law. So under Sharia law, a husband may strike his wife for any of these following reasons: if she does not attempt to make herself beautiful for him, if she refuses to meet his sexual demands, if she leaves the house without his permission or for a legitimate reason, if she neglects her religious duties, any of those reasons, and it is legal for your husband to beat you. Where are the progressives? Where are the liberals on this? This is Islamic law, right? It says in their Quran, there's a testimony in the Hadith, first of all, where Muhammad, he's the holiest of prophets, we're told, according to Islam. He physically struck his favorite wife all the time. I mean, he married a 9-year-old. That was his wife, Aisha was her name. So that's kind of weird. He was a pedophile. And he beat his favorite wife. But then, let's see, Allah told someone named Job to beat his wife. That's Quran 38:44. In Sahih, I can't pronounce this, Bukhari 72:715, a woman came to Muhammad and said, "Muhammad, please tell my husband to stop beating me, please." And her skin was described as being so badly bruised that it was green. It compared it to the color of an olive. And Muhammad did not admonish her husband, but said, "Go back to your husband and submit to his sexual desires." So there's the holy prophet leading your religion, and he's telling you to stop complaining that your husband is beating you. Go meet his sexual needs. I mean, that's awful. If we compared him to Jesus, I mean, they're night and day. Muhammad was a warlord. He enslaved women. He raped them with his men. This is all documented history. It's in their religious text.
Yeah, and just so we can provide some substance behind the claim that the majority of conservatives think this is an issue, while the majority of liberals would rather protect the religion of Islam and its ideals. I have another Pew Research study here showing that conservatives, 70% of conservatives think that we should speak bluntly, even critical of Islam as a whole, which is what we're doing right now. We're making points about some serious issues, some serious flaws within the religion, and right here, 80% of liberals think that we should be careful not to criticize Islam as a whole, because they believe that, yes, while there might be some terrorists in the religion of Islam, does not make the entire religion bad. Which, of course, it does not make the entire religion bad. There are some good people within the religion of Islam. That's true. However, as shown by the other Pew Research study, the majority of Islamic people are radicals by today's standards, because of these beliefs in Sharia law.
Yeah, so that was one of my problems we had social justice week at our school last year. We have one every week, but or every year, I should say. But it's a different topic every year. And so the topic last year was bridging the divide between Christians and Muslims. And some of the A, the misrepresentation of facts, and B, just blatant lies, which we can get into in a little bit. First, I want to talk about something they brought up. They said only 1% of Muslims have actually committed terrorism. So, first of all, that's a lot. That's a lot considering how many Muslims there are in the world. But you're looking at the wrong statistic when you look at how many people are committing terrorism. You want to know how many people are radicalized, how many people believe in what the terrorism is for, how many people believe in these strict Sharia law things that we would all agree are not progressive, are if anything oppressive towards minorities, gays, women, anyone else who's not Islam, you name it. So we should be looking at how many people are radical and making judgments off of that, not how many people actually have killed someone in a terrorist attack.
Yeah, and just so we can I found some more data while you're talking. So let me pull it up on screen. So this is for people who support Sharia law in the previous thing. So out of those people in Egypt, for example, 86% of those people believe that leaving Islam should be penalized with death. And these are all statistics from Pew Research. I mean, 82% in Jordan, 66% in Palestine, 46% in Lebanon, 62% in Malaysia. I mean, there are some like Albania, only 8%, but still, this is still a lot of people who believe that leaving Islam should be punishable by death, which is most people, right-minded people, even liberals will agree that that's somewhat extreme. That is extreme. That's extreme for religion to believe.
Yep. Yeah, no. Have you seen the video? There's a video. It's some like Muslim conference, or like I don't know, like how they have like Politicon and stuff like that, and it's this one like Muslim thing, and the speaker says, "How many of you, raise your hand in the audience are just normal Muslims? You're not radical. You're just normal, average Muslims." And they all raise their hand because they're all just everyday Muslims. And then he says, "How many of you, raise your hand, think that women and men should sit separately, must be separated?" And almost everyone raises up your hand, and you're like, oh, gee, like, that's kind of radical. But you're like, okay, maybe, some tradition or something. And then they're like, how many of you, raise your hand, believe that homosexuality must be punished by death? There is no other way. And they all raise their hands. And this is a huge, not a stadium, but a big, auditorium full of all these people that just claimed they are average, moderate Muslims, admitting to being gay, being punished by death. And it's all on video, too. I wish I knew the name of the thing that happened, but you could find it out there for sure. I think I have a recording of it on my phone, actually. But it's just like this myth that it's such a small percentage of people that believe this is just insane. So should we start talking about? Go ahead.
Well, before we do, I found some statistics on the view of homosexuality within Islam, so I'm gonna pull those up on screen for everybody right now. So this is another Pew Research, and right here it says, it says the percentage of Muslims who say it is morally wrong is the lighter green shade, and you can see in every single country it's the majority of Muslims. And most of these are in the 90s. We look at Tanzania, Jordan, Pakistan, Thailand, where it's 99% of Muslims believe that homosexuality is morally wrong. And this is one thing that just most progressive will say, that's awful, how could you ever believe that? And they're supporting a religion that directly contradicts their beliefs.
It's absolutely insane. If you look at countries like Saudi Arabia, where Muhammad's laws are applied most strictly, homosexuals are beheaded, hanged, stoned. There was those videos that surfaced, I think it was a year or two ago, of gay people being thrown off of buildings. They're giving these people flying lessons off rooftops, and it's just insane that you could call something like that the religion of peace. All those actions are directly related to the text in the Quran saying we must kill gay people. Being gay is a sin. All these things. If a Christian went and murdered a gay person and himself said, I did this because of my religion, I would be like, I I could see why. I mean, that kind of makes sense. There is a correlation between um, a negative view of homosexuality and someone going out and committing that act. I wouldn't be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But how about the Islamics who go out and commit terrorism every day? I wouldn't bring up something that has nothing to do with the issue. I'd say, yeah, there's probably a correlation there. So I don't know why liberals can't say the same thing about Islam when they see gay people being thrown off buildings. They used to burn gays alive in these countries. I mean, they literally I think it was 2014, they just made it illegal to throw acid in the faces of women in Saudi Arabia. What? Why would that be illegal, right? But it's just this mistreatment of minorities that Islam believes in, according to their text.
So before I interrupt you, mentioned like another point. What were you gonna bring up?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, so when talking about how we can kind of protect America, do you want to talk a little bit about propositions that have been made, specifically the Muslim? I know it's called a Muslim ban, but
yeah. So as I'm sure the majority of people know, President Trump has tried to instate a Muslim ban, prohibiting certain people coming in from certain countries to try and protect, American citizens, because a lot of these are truly radical beliefs, and it's a danger to a lot of people if these beliefs were to come into the United States. It'd be a danger to people, like to gay people, as shown, because the majority of Muslims don't believe that homosexuality should be allowed, and this is a danger to a lot of different people. And a lot of liberals are highly against the Muslim ban because it's discriminating against Muslims, which there is a case to be made. It is obviously discriminating against a certain group, but the question is it justified if we're protecting American citizens?
See, here's the thing. I don't necessarily. I know it's intended to discriminate against a certain group, being Muslims from these countries, but it wasn't. You're only prevented from these countries if you're Muslim, right? We're not letting anybody in.
Yeah.
From these countries. There were some exceptions with like family stuff or vacation stuff, I think, but it's also important to know where he came up with these 6 countries. They were all based on Obama's Department of Defense reports from back when Obama was in presidency, and they labeled out the countries that were the biggest threats to America. So Trump based his list off of that. And also, Obama also had a 6-month ban on, I believe it was Syrians entering the country. No, it was Iraq or Iran. But there was some sort of ban temporarily that he had, and you heard no outrage. None. I just don't understand the double standard with the left. It's incredible.
Yeah, but so to get just to kind of move things along, do you think that we should have this ban? Do you think it's acceptable?
I don't know. I feel like we don't need it. Would it help? I think yes. I don't think we should be taking in thousands of refugees, every year from these countries. It's so ironic. We're told like, oh, like these poor women and children, and then you see the pictures, and it's just a bunch of like military-aged men from these countries. It's kind of funny actually, just how starkly different it is. And I'm sure some of those are cherry-picked, but I don't know. I don't have super strong opinions about a Muslim ban or about certain restrictions coming in. Do you think there's any other ways to solve this outside of a Muslim ban or outside of a cultural reformation in terms of policy in America? How can we fix this?
I really don't see a way that we can. I'm a strong supporter in the First Amendment, which protects your religious beliefs. You're allowed to have whatever religious beliefs you would like. So, I don't see a policy way that we can change. I don't see a way through policy that we can change people's beliefs, because that would go against the First Amendment, which obviously neither of us want, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't see a way how we can do it through policy of American Muslims, but the only way that I can see the only option I see is either we do the Muslim ban because that's one way to protect American values from being infected from values from other countries that obviously most people agree are wrong. But just it comes down to can the government even do that? Can we discriminate against a certain group of people? Because it is by definition discrimination. We're prohibiting certain people from entering. It's undeniable that it is. I will concede that it is discrimination to against certain ethnicities. But is it worth it? Do we need to do it? Should we do it?
Yeah,
that's the question.
Do you know? Have you heard anything or read anything about Sam Harris and his beliefs on profiling?
I've not. No. Would you care to enlighten?
It's really interesting. So Sam Harris, he is the farthest thing from a conservative. You know, he's pro big government, pro choice, anti-religion, all religion really. He is an atheist, and that's kind of where he gets his fame from. But one of the things he talked about was how TSA should be profiling, right? And he says it's an incredible waste of resources when we treat an old grandma in her 90s the same way that we treat, you know, a man in his mid 30s, right? An able-bodied man. And he said he himself, he's a white guy, and he said he thinks he would fall under the category of someone that could be profiled, right? He says anyone who looks like they could be Muslim, and again, that is profiling, should be looked at more. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with this or not, but it's just something he said. It's an incredible waste of resources to treat, you know, an old couple or like a little kid the same as they would treat, you know, someone with a head wrap or something like that. Yeah, well, I don't know. That's what his views on that are. He's called a racist for that and all sorts of nonsense. But
I mean, like, I can see where it's coming from, that it's a waste, or it would be a waste of resources to not profile. But TSA is kind of a waste of resources to begin with, is it not? I don't think something like TSA is, but I think TSA in itself is just inefficient. I mean, there's plenty of, I'm reading articles right now, 70% of fake weapons that are being tested to see if they catch them or not. I mean, they're only catching 30% of stuff. I mean, at that point, it's kind of a waste of resources, because they're.
Yep.
I mean, yes, they could stop something, but they're missing 70% of things according to Forbes. I mean, and according to the Washington Examiner, they missed 95%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, at that point, is it even worth it at that point?
Sam Harris, he told a story when in the same article where TSA misusing resources. He forgot that he had a 9mm pistol in his bag, and so he found out when he got to the place after he flew on the plane that he had a handgun and like 9 pounds of ammunition that they just didn't catch. Seriously, he had a loaded handgun on him, and he just walked right through TSA. So I think there's also a high level of incompetence within TSA. I don't really see why. Like, for example, my dad, when I went to the airport recently, they like stopped down and like patted like his whole like pants area. It was really funny because, you know, they're touching right around his crotch and stuff, but it's like, okay, like that they're suspicious of, but then people are walking right through with handguns. Or I brought my PS4 on a plane one time, and they were like rubbing bomb liquid on it, like dusting it off like it was this like time bomb that was about to explode, and they had us go in like a separate lane just because we had a PS4. It's like, okay, like they're that suspicious about that.
Yeah.
But then people just walk through with guns and knives all the time. So yeah, it's just TSA needs to be reformed. I don't necessarily think you could privatize it though. I mean, how would that work?
The airports would pay for security.
Well, no, I know, but don't you think that would be prone to corruption if you're trying to be the most efficient,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's ideally what people would compete with each other, who can get people through faster. Because that's what customers really care about, right? They hate waiting through security. So if you have companies that are trying to be as efficient as possible, I fear that, they'll skip steps in order to thoroughly check.
But then also the companies will want to be the most trusted companies of not letting any potential threats through.
That's true. That's true. That it would hurt their credibility if
Yeah. And I mean, if we're missing between 70-95% of stuff anyways, I mean, it's obvious we need to at least reform or change something. I mean, because it's obviously not working too well. We either need to reform or privatize. That's the only two options at this point. I'm more in favor of privatization because I just think the free market can do it better. But I can see where you're coming from, that it would be subject to corruption. But honestly, so is TSA in its current form. I mean, TSA employees aren't paid that much. Like, it's still subject to corruption, but I can see where you're coming from, that it's with companies, it's bottom line of trying to get as many people through as possible, but I mean, it's not working anyways.
Yeah, I think there's decent arguments on both sides of them, but going back to the topic of Islam, one thing that I hear a lot is, oh, well, what you really should be worried about is right-wing terrorists, right? You heard Don Lemon on CNN. It was so funny. In one sentence, he says, we need to stop attacking people by their group identities and realize that we have a white male problem in this country. And it was like, what? No. I don't know how you can be that contradictory. Literally, it was hilarious to me, because it was almost like you were trying, like you can actually be that like oblivious to what you just said and then completely contradict it. But going back to that point, the reason that is because right-wingers, guess what? They make up about 50% of the country. Muslims, however, make up a tiny, tiny minority. I'll actually look it up. Muslim percentage of USA. I want to see how many Americans. All right, it's about 1.1%, right? That 1.1% is way more likely. They commit a lot more if you put it into proportion, right? Yeah. So yes, right-wingers do commit more violent crime or whatever, but that's because they are 50% of the country compared to 1%. So again, it's a way of looking at a statistic, and you need to think about what it means, right? Yeah. And I feel like the left just doesn't do that. The same with their only 1% of Muslims commit terrorism in the world. How many? Okay, let's see how many Muslims there are in the world. You can go ahead and say something. I want to see. Okay.
How many are there, Jake? Tell us.
Okay. Let's see. According to a 2010 study, Islam has 1.5 billion adherents. So now we'll do. I should do this on a calculator. That'd be easy. 1.5 billion divided times. 15 million Muslims are terrorists in the world, according to the liberals.
Yeah.
1% of 1.5 billion is 15 million. And we're told that we shouldn't be concerned about that? Like, really? That's, I mean, these numbers are insane. And that's them thinking that's their best defense. So I say, and I think you could talk a little bit about this, why do you think the left is so quick to bring up Christianity for some reason whenever we try to talk about Islam, right? Like Social Justice Week, they made the entire thing about, well, Christians are bad too, right? Yeah. Which is ironic because it's a Catholic school, but why do they do that?
I mean, I think it's the entire like mentality of the left. I mean, I sometimes I just don't understand. I don't understand where they're coming from. A lot of issues I can see like the points that are being made. That's just one issue I don't understand. You can't say one thing's okay just because the other thing is bad in their eyes too. That's not how the world works. And it's kind of like a skewed, warped logic on the left, and I personally don't understand it in that situation at all.
Yeah, I just remember them saying radical Islam or radical Muslims are to Islam what the KKK is to Christianity, and it's like, well, sure, but why are we talking about Christianity right now? Like, we go from discussions about why Islam needs reformation to, well, the Crusades happened, hundreds of years ago.
And I mean, the amount of, like, the percentage of people who are in the KKK and are Christian, I mean, that's less than 0.1% of all Christians, and it still exists. And obviously, no one would logically support the KKK. And there's even been reformations where it's been come out by the Catholic Church has released official statements saying that they're misinterpreting Bible verses to justify their thing. There's been reformations that point, no, this is wrong, and the church says no, we need to be moving away from this. This is wrong, and we just don't see that from the religion of Islam.
So when the KKK is doing these bad things, they are going against Christian doctrine, right? They're ignoring it and only looking at the text. Whereas if a Muslim goes out and, blows himself up and kills a bunch of people, he is doing what not only his text supports, but what the laws in his country support, what his culture supports, what the doctrine supports. They haven't had the same reformations that Christians have, and that's a problem, right? So we can look at the KKK doing, like, if the KKK killed someone today, you'd be like, okay, like, I think they're kind of insane. Like, their own religion's official statements and doctrines say what they did is wrong. Whereas if a Muslim goes out and does something bad, I'm like, well, yeah, its religion still believes that stuff today. It's like they're stuck in this weird medieval time period, and they haven't progressed the same as the rest of the world has.
Yeah, and a lot of liberals will argue that because there are Muslims who say no, that's wrong. They'll point it out. They'll say that's wrong, and liberals will point to that and say Muslims believe that's wrong. It's like, well, that's one Muslim who believes it's wrong, and while we agree with them, they're not they're not the authority of the Muslim religion. They're not in charge of what is it doctrine for Muslims? I don't know what it is, what the official language is, but
doctrine refers to
but I think there's there's specific like wording for that. But just because some Muslims say that it's wrong doesn't mean that it just becomes law within the religion of Islam.
Yeah, one of the things I wish would happen is I wish they would put these Muslims who come out and speak out against it, because there are Muslims in the world, especially in the U.S., where they have that privilege of not being stoned to death whenever they speak out against their religion, and they do come out. But when they do, what are they doing? They're criticizing Islam. They're saying Islam is oppressive towards women, oppressive towards gays, and liberals are so afraid to agree with that, right? Because then they think that they're now attacking Muslims, and it's like, no, we're talking about ideology here. So I feel like the people trying to empower these moderate Muslims are the conservatives. You have people like, what's her name? I have it right here. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, right? She's been on PragerU a few times. She was born in an Islamic country. Her parents were going to force her into a marriage when she was like 12 years old. That often happens in the culture there. And she ran away, right? So she's seen Islam from an inside perspective and an outside perspective. And she fights for a moderate Muslim movement, but the left is so opposed to her. And it's like, I just don't understand. I don't understand how you can be for the little guy, but then when the little guy wants to stand up for themselves, you shun them because you're afraid of being called racist. It makes no sense.
I agree. Yeah. I don't know. You summed it up very well. Is there any other points you want to talk about?
I'm looking through some of the notes. I've taken these course, since like sophomore year. Yeah, this was as of like 2 years ago. There were 30,000, almost 31,000 terror attacks carried out by Islamic terrorism since 9/11. Right, that's since 9/11. So that's in past couple decades. There have not been 30,000 plus Christian terror attacks since then. There's no way to compare the two and try to draw a parallel line between them. This is not a problem of people being radical. It's a problem of people being radically Islamic, because there is a direct tie to Islam here. It's not just being radical in general. Islamic terrorism has killed so many more people than any other form of terrorism in the country.
In current times, yes, but I don't know how true that is historically.
Oh no, not historically speaking.
Yeah, it's important we make that distinction though, because I mean, it's undeniable that the church, I'm not Catholic, but the Catholic Church has had they've had large issues, but those issues have been solved through Reformation. That's why reformations occur, for the betterment of a religion.
Which is why I was speaking specifically of since 9/11, right? Yeah. That's the statistics I was using. I don't know the numbers for how many Islamic terrorist attacks were occurring before then. But yeah, no, I want to make sure that I maybe I wasn't specific enough, but I'm referring since 9/11, no other group of people or set of ideology, I should say, has carried out this amount of terror. Even I think you could make the argument in the world since 9/11. I mean, I think the biggest threat to gay people right now and women is not American patriarchy and Donald Trump. It's Islam as an ideology.
Yeah. So, any more points you'd like to bring up?
Well, I'm gonna look through a little bit of these some more. If any viewers have any questions, feel free to type them in the comments, and we'll answer them. There's some really good pictures that I know I have saved somewhere, but it basically shows in a lot of these Middle Eastern countries, gay people are actually rounded up into trucks for processing, where they are beaten, forced into marriage, whipped, or they're hung, killed, all of that sorts of stuff. And one more really interesting thing for all the feminists out there. In 2015, this was in March, in Saudi Arabia, right? Remember, Hillary Clinton took millions of dollars from Saudi Arabia. The feminist queen took all this money from a country where their court sentenced a gang rape victim to 200 lashes. She got raped, and she got 200 lashes because she was raped. You want to talk about a rape culture? Look at the Islamic countries. There is no comparison to the United States. None.
Anything else?
I don't know. I'm thinking here. So we talked a little bit about solutions. I know we've talked before about reformations and how likely we think that reformations could be, but I don't know how much we could expand on that. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I mean, no, I said it at the beginning of the video. I don't see a way that a reformation is possible because of how oppressive Islam is. I mean, the only way that it could be less oppressive and allow more ideas within the religion is reformation, but you can't have a reformation because it's so oppressive. It's an endless cycle that it's almost impossible to break. There's a possibility that we could see a change in the future, especially if there's more moderate Muslims that come to the United States. They have freedom of speech. They could portray their ideas of where they want their religion to head, but until a lot of these Muslims are allowed to speak their views, more moderate views, I don't see a way a reformation can occur.
Well, see, you say like, well, I don't think that a reformation is possible because they're so radical. That was the same thing held true for, Christianity, or, I'm not familiar with
Mm,
Buddhist reformations, or Hindu, or other religions, but I know for Christianity they were extremely radical at a point. However, Reformation was still possible. It, yes, took, centuries and decades, but I think something could be possible. I think we need the left to actually do what they believe in and stand up for the little guy here, right?
yeah.
And until they do that, I agree with you. I think it's very hard. But once they do, and we have that mainstream support, I think that'll help us out a lot.
Yeah, I agree. So, any closing thoughts before we end the stream?
I don't believe so. I think it's gonna be short and sweet. I think we're at about 45 minutes or something right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. That's just our thoughts on Islam. It would be really interesting in the future, because I know, just because there's only so many things you can talk about. I know we probably will eventually, have someone on to talk about Islam with. Hopefully, they are someone who disagrees with us, because we just want to be able to get someone else's opinion out there. Um,
Mm,
and I think that would be helpful. And just starting a conversation is what this is all about. So I think that would be
yeah.
beneficial in the future. But aside from that, I think we covered all the things we need to talk about. Again, just to summarize, we're attacking ideas, not people.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed the live stream, or if you're watching this video, make sure you drop a like and subscribe. If you want to know more about us, we have our Twitter profiles in the description. Yeah, but if you enjoyed, make sure you tune in next week. Hopefully we'll have another live stream up sometime during the weekend. Let us know if there's a certain topic you would like us to talk about. Yeah, but I hope you enjoyed, and peace out.